Lighting works a little strangely in Minecraft. For example, if you place a block here like so, you'll notice that there's no shadow to indicate that there's a light source on top. Likewise, if you place 2 blocks here like this, you expect there to be a shadow stretching in the opposite direction of the sun, but there isn't. So what can we do? Well, we can place a darker block like green concrete where we'd assume the shadows to be. Like this. The same goes for the other 2 blocks that we've placed. And that looks just a little bit more realistic now. That being said, how do we go from this to this? Well, there are a few principles that we need to get through first. For one, the light source. In this case, a light source is the sun. And whenever you have a light source, there will always be a shadow cast on the opposite side of the light source, like this. Whereas if our sun were to be there, our shadow will instead be cast over here. But because there is no light source over there, we don't actually have to add shadow here. The position of your light source can also determine the length of your shadow. For example, if our light source is perpendicular to our object, the shadow cast will be longer. Likewise, if our light source is diagonal to our object, the shadow cast will be shorter. And lastly, if our light source is directly above our object, no shadow will be cast. Easy enough, isn't it? Now, let's move on to a more difficult concept, the grayscale. On paper, this may seem like an easy thing to understand, but in reality, the grayscale doesn't only consist of colours that are grey. In fact, coloured blocks like the ones in my hotbar can also exist on the grayscale. As all of these blocks exist on the same part of the grayscale, they have the same value. This also applies to the next set of blocks that we're going to place down, which also exist on the same part of the grayscale, despite having different colours. Like this. So, what does this have to do with lighting? Well, let's take this bush as an example. As the sun is over there, we can build a shadow at the opposite direction with green terracotta. Like this. And we could just leave it like this, but we can actually add more colours to the shadow that are of the same value. For instance, grey concrete powder and mangrove wood. Like that. We can also do the same for the leaves, by adding some spruce leaves to the birch, so as to create a bit of colour variance within the bush itself. I think that we can also add a bit of light to where the sun is using azalea at the left side, like this. Oh, not that. Yeah, like this. I think it looks a bit better now. We can also apply the same principle to make this wall, and as you can see, even though the wall isn't completely brown, it still works because all of the highlighted areas have the same value and all of the shadowed areas also have the same value. Now, when talking about lighting, we actually need to understand what light is made out of. We'll only be talking about white light because there's only white light in Minecraft. White light is made out of red, green, and blue light combined together. In some photographs, these colours actually distort and split, creating an effect known as chromatic aberration. Typically, in photography, chromatic aberration is something that is undesirable. But when you add it to your Minecraft build, you can actually add a splash of colour that somehow still fits, even though it may not be the same colour as what you're building. So let's take this wall as an example. At the border between light and shadow, we can go ahead and add a bit of jungle wood and acacia wood to simulate the chromatic aberration effect. And that's what it looks like. Honestly, it doesn't make much of a difference in this particular build, but when you make it on a larger build, you'll be able to see its effects on a greater scale as well. So, with this information, what can we do? We've gone ahead and built a pavilion of sorts. I'm so sorry for the video quality. I really need to get a better screen recorder. But anyways, here's what it looks like. So far, I haven't added any detailing in terms of the colours. And truth be told, it looks more than a little bland. But using the concepts that we've just gone through, we can improve it. We can start off by marking out where the shadows will be, and in this build, we are going to use stone to do that. Our light is not only going to be coming in from the top, but it's also going to be coming in from the 4 windows at the sides. And all of that light will converge around the lectern. So we can mark up the path of light using stone like this. Light travels in straight lines, so using the stone, we're going to make a straight line towards the lectern. Now to do the same for the other sides, and done. We'll also have to do the same with the walls. At the moment, the contrast between the stone and the white concrete might look a bit high, but I really can't say much other than trust the process. And that's what our first wall looks like. After planning out where the rest of the shadows are going to go, we can start filling the shadows up. And let's get to it. And this is how it looks like so far. But we're not quite done yet. There's still more things that we need to add. For example, towards the corners, the shadows actually ought to be darker than towards the middle. But at the moment, it's all completely uniform. So we can change that by using andesite, smooth stone, and clay to try and make the center a bit brighter. You'll notice that clay also has a blue tinge to it, which we can use alongside white terracotta to create a chromatic aberration-like effect. Now to create the edges a bit darker, and that's how it looks like for now. And if we do the same for the other sides, we're done with the floor. So, as for the walls, we're gonna do a quick time lapse instead. Let's go! And we're done. So this is what it looks like, and let's explain what we did. Over here, you'll notice that there's a bit of light blue terracotta in the midst of the stone, but it doesn't really stand out because it's got a similar value to the stone surrounding it. And I think it helps to break the monotony of the grey. Now, if we look up here, you'll also notice that the walls get lighter as it gets closer and closer towards the window. I'm not too sure how to explain it, but essentially, the concentration of light decreases as the distance between the light source and the object increases. And in this case, our light source is the window, so the farther away the wall is from the window, the less light it will receive. In any case, enough about the shadows. Let's move on to the actual lighting. There's been a lot of changes made to what was just once plain white concrete. For instance, if you look at the walls, you'll notice that there's actually a bit of sand incorporated into the white. And this was done to make the walls look a bit more dated. Unless a building gets repainted, generally, the older it is, the more faded and yellowed the colours of the building become. You can see this quite clearly in Baroque and Renaissance architecture. Now, let's take a look at the floor. Towards the lectern, where the light from the 4 windows converges, there's actually snow, which is the brightest block in Minecraft in terms of its value. In terms of other small details that we've added, you'd likely already have noticed the candles and the white stained glass panes around the walls. The candles merely act as a light source, while the white stained glass panes are there for highlights. As for the leaves, we also switched up their colours a little. To create a greater contrast between light and shadow, brighter blocks like lime stained glass panes and melons were used to make the lighting, while darker blocks like spruce and dark prismarine were used to create the shadows instead. Originally, it was all just oak leaves, but I figured that it'd be a bit dull. And I think that's about it. Thanks for watching. I'd never really thought that I'd get to a second video, but here we are. I've got a couple more videos planned, but if you'd like to see specific types of content, feel free to add your suggestions below. I'll make sure to consider it. I've still got a long way to go in terms of building and editing, but I'll try to get better. Thanks for supporting me by even clicking on this video, and I really hope you liked it. In any case, that's it for today. See you next time!